There still may be some snow on the ground outside, but this is the most exciting time of year for gardeners. That's because it's time to start our seeds. If you have been starting your seeds and are still wondering what other seeds to grow, keep watching. It's going to be a great video. Welcome back to the Apothecary. My name is Jessica, and I'm so excited to be sharing with you the seeds that I'll be growing for my 2026 garden. As we begin to think about the types of seeds that we want to grow, the types of vegetables, herbs, fruits, we need to consider a few things. One, of course, being the zone or region that we are in. This is really important when it comes to the varieties of these different plants and how well they'll do in our area. So it's great to do a search if you are unsure of the zone that you are in, the growing zone. Just type in growing zone and then your city and state, and it should come up as a number. For instance, I am in Maryland, which is 7A. The second thing that's handy to know before starting your seed purchases or beginning to grow your seeds is your frost date. Now this will be your spring frost date because there's also more of a fall frost date, but that's not what we are looking at the moment. So for your spring frost date, you'll want to count backwards how many weeks until that frost date that you have in order to grow and to start your seeds indoors if that's what you are planning to do. So for my area, April 17th is the frost date. So I have until that time to start my seeds and get them out into the ground after that date to make sure that they'll be protected. Now, of course, these are just estimate dates. They are never a set in stone date that will be perfectly safe for your plants. So that's something that's also good to keep in mind, is that just because it says that this day there's less likely to be frost, there's still about a 10% chance that this could be wrong. So for instance, around my area, around Mother's Day, we do tend to have a strong possibility for another frost, and that's much later than this. So anything that I plant that is frost sensitive around that time may have a harder time, maybe stunted, or could even just die altogether. So there is a little bit of risk when it comes to gardening, but it's good to have these dates in mind just before you get started to know what you can plant and what timing is advised and kind of go from there. And as you become more experienced, you'll kind of get a feeling for when the right timing is. Now, I've already started my tomatoes and peppers because these are plants that you really want to start at least in my area. I usually like to start them around January or February indoors. And that gives them at least 6 to 8 weeks to really get going. Then for the broccoli and herbs, they need a little less time, about 4 to 6 weeks before they are developed enough to really get put outside into the ground. Now, the benefits of starting seeds indoors are for places like if you're living in a zone like I am that is still very cold, there's lots of snow right now. We cannot just go and put things outside at the moment because they would just die. Also, the cold can be really can make certain plants grow more slowly or weaken certain plants. So I like to start all of my seeds indoors and then transfer them outside to harden off before putting them into the garden. Okay, so grab a cup of something nice and let's take a look at some seeds. So one thing that I want to plant this year is these beautiful Chinese forget-me-nots. These are lovely flowers that really make the garden look beautiful. They just have a whimsical fairy-like feeling to them and add a pop of color too. So it makes that more cottage feel that I'm looking for right now to add to my garden. And these are something that I've not really grown before, so this will be a first for me to kind of put out there and see how they do in my area, see what they're like, their growing pattern is like, and how they come back if they come back next year. Another seed that I'm going to be starting this year is snapdragons. So snapdragons are gorgeous flowers. They add so much brightness to your garden, and I did have some that I started last year and put out, and those were absolutely beautiful. Now snapdragons, there's different varieties, and depending on the variety that you have, they will bloom at different times of year. So it's good to know kind of what variety that you have, when they're blooming, and for how long. Also, they have different colors available. This one is the yellow, purple, crimson, bronze, and pink, and white. So that will be really interesting to see how they look. Another flower that I'll be starting is borage. Now, borage is one that I grow every year. It is absolutely stunning with these blue flowers, and I love borage because, of course, it's a medicinal flower as well, and it can be eaten in salads or just eaten by themselves. You can just take the flower and pop it in your mouth, and it has this kind of cooling, interesting flavor that's been compared kind of to like a juicy lettuce or melon flavor even. But what I love about it is that it is a great addition to the garden because of its medicinal value and also to the garden itself. So pollinators absolutely love borage, and after the borage has been pollinated, the blooms turn to like more of a pink or purple color, which is really fascinating to see. But it's also just great to have in the garden because it can fertilize your garden with the blooms that are spent or the leaves that are spent. So you can just chop those and lay them into the garden to fertilize them. Now you can also eat the tender greens of this plant. They are a little spiky, so they would have to be the tender greens, or else they can be kind of prickly. And when you do make medicine out of this plant, you need to kind of be aware of the prickly nature of the leaves. But when you cook them, that kind of goes away, so it's not as prevalent then. Another seed that I love to grow is basil. Now this variety is a fun one. This is mammoth basil, and the flavor of mammoth basil is a little different than normal basil, but the most interesting thing about this basil is the size. So as it says, it's mammoth, so it's quite large. It really, the leaves become more like short lettuce leaves, like a curly lettuce. That's what it looks like when it's fully grown. And so you can use them for wraps. If you make any kind of sandwich wraps, you can use this, and it adds that beautiful basil flavor, although it's slightly more licorice tasting than normal basil is, but it's absolutely wonderful to use for any kind of sandwich wraps or even on a sandwich as lettuce. I've done that, taking it and putting it on any kind of tomato sandwich or any kind of burger that you are making. It is very tasty, and of course the nutrition is wonderful with basil, and it's a carminative that helps with all of our kind of digestive issues that we may have going on. Next, we have cilantro, and I grow this one every year. I love cilantro. This one is Calypso cilantro, and it performed really well, this variety, in my garden. But cilantro is one that I go through a lot because I make a lot of fish dishes. I make a lot of tacos and, Mexican-inspired cuisine. So the cilantro is wonderful for those, also with salads, of course. And really, I put cilantro into so many things. I add it to rice. So I go through tons of cilantro. Also, of course, if you're making salsa, it's a necessity to have, in my opinion. So fresh cilantro is you just can't beat it. And the price of it in the store can be really overwhelming. So I love cilantro, and this variety is great. But there's many different types that you can choose from. This one just performed really, really well, even in some of the hotter times of year. And I was surprised to see that. So it was very, very hardy. Next, we have wild bergamot, bee balm. And this one is so beneficial in the form of a tea. It's wonderful to have in your tea garden. It's really good for soothing your nervous system, also with helping with things like any kind of yeast infections or overgrowth. It can be really helpful there. There's a lot of things you can do with bee balm. Of course, on the skin, it's great to have as well. But it's very aromatic, very highly scented, good for colds, for the skin, for digestion. And it's also one that the pollinators love. And of course, it has these gorgeous flowers, if you've never seen one. And it just adds such interest to your garden landscape. So this is one that I like to grow. Now, you do have to be careful with the placement. It has to get enough sunlight to where it's really making these flowers. Also, it can be a little sensitive in terms of the soil and what that's like in order to produce the best foliage and blooms. The next one I love to grow is this opal basil. This purple basil is delicious. If you've never tried it, it is unlike any other flavor that I've ever tasted. And it does have kind of a licorice taste to it, but it's very different than that even. So I don't even know how to define the flavor other than to say it's very good. And it's pretty hardy. Basil tends to grow pretty easily, especially if you've grown basil before. It's about the same in terms of growing, in my opinion, but it can be a little slower sometimes to get large, but overall it's pretty easy to grow. I just oversow this one just a little bit more, and you can have gorgeous basil leaves in anything that you're making. It really adds that interest because it's purple, so it adds that color interest to your food. Okay, the next thing is peppers. I always grow peppers every year, but I experiment with the variety of peppers. So this year I'm trying the emerald giant bell pepper. In the past I've grown sun peppers, and those were really nice and got to a nice size. So this year we'll try this variety, and I've already started these seedlings, but if you haven't, you can still catch up. It may not be as large of a plant to put out as you would if you had already started them and put them out during when the window of time is that you can. But you can definitely start plants later than what the recommended dates are. So don't feel discouraged if you forgot to start your peppers or your tomatoes. It's totally fine to do that now. And I tend to sow throughout the season so that I have more of these plants. So don't feel discouraged by that at all. Okay, the next one is beans. I grow a lot of beans, and I love growing beans because they are very prolific, and depending on the variety that you get, you can either get them all through the season and just keep getting different fruitings of them, or you can get them all at once and make something nice with them all at the same time. This one is a pole bean, so it climbs any kind of stake that you put in, any kind of wooden stake or trellis. And it is important to have a trellis, because if you don't, they kind of don't know what to do with themselves, and they just kind of flop over looking for something to attach to. So it is good to have a trellis ready, but beans are wonderful to grow. I like pole beans. I also like bush beans. Bush beans are just, you don't need the trellis for those really, because they just kind of branch out. But the pole beans is just vertical gardening. It helps to kind of keep things off of the garden floor so that you have more room. But I just grow any variety. I grow both, usually the bush and the pole beans, and I like to freeze the beans and use them in cooking during the winter. Okay, next we have the other basil, which is the Genovese basil. So growing lots of different varieties of basil. Genovese is the one that you typically see in all of your pastas and pizzas and things like that, and that is what I use basil for a lot, just because it's delicious. But I also use it for tea, so I like having lots of varieties and options of basil in everything that I'm making. Okay, so we also have chamomile, and chamomile is, I've said in other videos, I just love chamomile. It's one of my favorite tea herbs, and it is so beneficial for your digestive system, for your nervous system. It just helps you so much to calm down and to feel peaceful, and it's just really good for you, and it helps with cough and cold as well. And it's the scent of chamomile is, I would say it's my favorite. It is a apple, like a honeyed apple kind of scent. It's really, really delicious, and especially when you add some honey to your tea with the chamomile, it's perfect. And maybe a little bit of mint. So when you are growing chamomile, there's two varieties, Roman and German. And honestly, I use whatever I have. So sometimes I'll have one or the other. Sometimes I'll have both, and I'll grow both. And really, there's not really one that's truly better than the other. There may be slight differences in the way the amount of blooms or the scent, but I really just grow both of them, and most of the time it's not really something that you notice very strongly in terms of the difference of them. And they are one that you do need to continue to pick. So if you are growing chamomile, you want to make sure to pick the blooms as often as you can, because it'll signal to the plant that you are wanting more, so it needs to make more to keep up with that production. All right, next we have radishes. I love growing radishes of different varieties, so I'll probably grow a few different kinds, but this one is the French breakfast radish, and these are just very easy to grow, very dependable. You just, sprinkle some seeds in, and they grow pretty well without issue. To be honest, a lot of the time I wait until early spring and I just put the seeds right into the garden bed or wherever I'm growing them, and they grow just fine. Now, if you have some pest problems, sometimes there are some things that do like to eat or chew on the radishes, especially the leaves. So if that happens, then if squirrels are digging them up, like what happened to me last year, or you have some kind of cabbage worm or something that's chewing on the leaves, then you might need to cover them. But if you are not really being bothered that much with the pests, then they grow pretty easily without being disturbed. And they're an early spring crop, so you do want to get these out as soon as you can, as soon as it's slightly warm outside, an early spring. Here, I'll probably put these out around April, the beginning of April, and it'll be fine for them to grow in the cold and kind of produce more in later spring. I'll start some indoors, but I usually continue just to sow them outdoors. Okay, then we have the cayenne pepper. These are beautiful orange peppers, and I'm very excited to try these. I've never tried this variety, so I'm interested to see if there's any kind of difference in the spiciness between these and normal cayenne peppers. But peppers, again, are something you want to put out kind of early on, around January or February, if you can, and then let them get to a larger size before putting them out, at least in this zone that I'm in. Okay, so now we have beefsteak tomato. I love my tomatoes. Beefsteak is the one that does really well here. This variety is very just dependable. It comes back all of the time. In fact, I still have plants that are outside right now being frozen over, but the seeds will sow themselves every year because I've grown beefsteak tomatoes for years. So I have plants that'll just grow. They're called volunteer plants. And they're very, very strong, very good tomatoes, very large tomatoes. And of course they have that meaty texture that gives it their name. But they're really great for tomato sandwiches, for making anything really. So it's one that I use in everything. Salsa, I use it in tomato sauce, anything that you're making. And yes, they may not be, the sauce tomatoes, but they still work for everything. Okay, we have the Genovese, which they did grow pretty well. I'm kind of experimenting still with these, as these were one that I grew last year, and I did get some good hefty tomatoes from it, but I'm still trying to figure out if this one is going to be one that I continue to grow or not, so I'll be testing that out this year. Okay. Next, we have the Numex peppers. This is another one I'm going to be trying out for the first time this year. I'm excited to see, these larger kind of spicy peppers. I do love spicy peppers. I use them in all kinds of cooking, so always happy to have more spicy peppers for salsa and spicy dishes. Another favorite of mine is the cream sausage tomato. These are a bright yellow tomato, which is very unusual for a tomato, of course. And I love them for that, but also the flavor is it's a little less acidic than normal tomato varieties. And I'll tell you, this plant produces a ton of tomatoes. It just, every time I would go outside, there would be more of these on the vine. So these are very much worth growing. They look beautiful, especially in salsa. If you're making like a normal salsa, they look gorgeous, and especially like a peach or mango salsa would be fantastic with these. But they're great raw. I use them on sandwiches. Now they are a little bit oblong shaped. They're not normal in terms of the shape. They're not spherical, but they produce just so many tomatoes, and they're always perfect. Every time I picked one, there was no blemishes, no cracks, they were just beautiful. So if you are looking for something new to try, I definitely recommend these. The next thing that I love to grow is onions. Now, onions, you do need to take a look and see if they are short day or long day varieties, because that does matter how much sunlight that you have in your area. And the grow season is going to really, how long your growing season is going to depend on whether you get the short day or the long day, and which one does better in your particular region. But for the most part, I just take whatever onions that I get. I have both long day and short day because of where I am, and both of them work fairly well. Sometimes some of them will be smaller than others, and that's also due to the variety that you're getting. So for instance, these white globes sometimes will be a little smaller because they're long day variety. So it really just depends on ones you're getting, when you start them, how many you're starting, how you're doing it, in terms of the size that you are getting from your onions. And then I also have the sweet Spanish onion. So I just really sow in all different kinds. And that's kind of an experiment I'm doing this year, is just starting them all together. Last year I separated the red and the white and the different varieties. This year I'm just going to put them together and see kind of what happens. Don't be afraid to experiment with your gardening. It really gives you more knowledge in the end, even if something doesn't quite turn out the way that you anticipated. So as you can see, most of these seeds in particular are from MI Gardener, and I purchase from all kinds of places. I purchase seeds from the dollar store as well, and those work just as well. When I first started gardening, that's pretty much all I used was dollar store seeds. But since I've went along in my journey, I found that I really like MI Gardener's seeds because of the varieties that you can get. But anywhere that you really enjoy the variety and the service and the types of the seeds that are being grown, you can purchase from. I will say that there are some seed companies now that are doing experimentation with the genetics of the seeds. So I would just be cautious if they are organic and non-GMO, because that's really important. And just to make sure that the seeds that you're getting are ethically sourced, and if you can, somewhat local to you. But if not, that they are performing well in your garden, because sometimes seeds from one grower may do really well in one person's garden and not very well in another's. Another brand of seed that is really good is Burpee, and they're really well known. I haven't had any issues with their seeds either. And there's many other companies that I have purchased from. In fact, my garden is several, I've been growing for years now, so I have many different varieties of seeds that I've purchased, and different companies. And really, the garden, after a time, it can start to produce itself. So there's some things I don't even need to plant anymore because they just come back by themselves. And other things I go through quite a lot, and I want to make sure that I have a good supply of them. But these are just some of the things that I grow. Like I said, I have a lot growing out there already, a lot of things coming back. I'll add more things. This does not need to be your final plan in terms of what you're putting into your garden. You can always add starts, plant starts later on in the season, or you can direct sow into the garden and just skip some steps there if you want at a later point. This is just what I like to do. This time of year is really fun, and I always love to start as much as I can to kind of get ahead of the season. But you don't have to start seeds indoors. If you have a nice greenhouse or a warmer climate, you can just start them right outdoors. It's really just a process that is fun to play with and to see what works best for you and what you like to do. But I hope that this video gives you some inspiration. I find it just interesting, and I always like to watch these videos myself to see what other people are growing, to get inspiration from them as well. And I will be making more gardening content, so if you like this video, please subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss the other videos that I'll be making about how I start my plants and more about gardening itself and the journey that I've been on. Also, if you are wanting to grow a medicinal garden, I have a PDF that's over 50 pages long that I typed by hand. There is no AI in the process of this PDF, and there's also images that I took from my own garden last year that you can see how the plants turn out and have beautiful color pictures. and the instructions on how to grow the plants, in what temperatures, what regions, what pH, all the information that you really need to grow a medicinal garden, as well as my experience. I am an herbalist and I have been studying for years, so my years of experience are also in there in terms of information about the plants and how to use them. So if you're interested in that, it's only $6.99. I will put a link to that in the description box below. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to talking with all of you in the next video very, very soon.